Hello everyone! Welcome to the latest episode of Financial Tidbits, here with me, Royston at NAOF. First off, a big apology as I've been neglecting my duty to all my NAOF viewers out there with no video production for the past couple of months, as I've been busy with house shifting and getting my kid prepped for primary school. This video, hopefully, is the first of many to come in 2022, and for today's content, I would like to highlight 4 ETFs which I'm looking to purchase to hedge my portfolio against the impact of rising rates and inflation, both of which seems to be the hottest buzzwords in the finance community since the start of the year. I recently wrote an article on rising rates and inflation, how one can restructure your portfolio to mitigate the impact of these two forces. I put the link to that article in the description below, so feel free to hit it up if that is something of your interest. In this video, I would like to go one step further and introduce to my viewers 4 ETFs that I believe will benefit from both a rising rate environment, one that is a direct response to combat rising inflation. The first ETF on the list is something that I've talked about pretty often, that is the Global X Copper Miners ETF. I've done several videos on why I believe the fundamentals for copper, even without the tailwind stemming from rising inflation, are looking pretty solid over the coming decade. Copper is an industrial metal that will likely witness a surge in demand over the foreseeable near term, due to its vital role in many rapidly growing industrial sectors such as electric vehicle batteries and semiconductor wiring. Combined with tight supply, and I won't be surprised that this is one metal that will see its price rise in 2020, particularly if inflation is to rear its ugly head. According to Global X, the price of copper has historically risen 18% for every 1% annual rise in consumer prices since 1992. The only other commodity that eclipses this return is energy, which I will touch on shortly. By buying the COPX ETF, an investor will have indirect exposure to the performance of copper prices through the copper miners. The second ETF is the NANR ETF, or the SPDR S&P North American Natural Resources ETF. Now, this ETF is mostly one that is flying under the radar given its relatively small AUM of 500 million. However, the expense ratio is pretty manageable at just 0.35%, and despite its small AUM, this ETF purchases some of the largest companies out there, with a sector weighting consisting mainly of basic material companies as well as energy-related companies. The ETF's top holdings are Chevron, Exxon, Nutrien, which is a fertilizer company, Monsanto, and Archer Daniels Smith Lance, all market leaders in their respective industries and one which is well hedged against the impact of inflation. Energy players have been one of the best performers in 2022 so far, and rightfully so as oil prices continue to climb, boosted partially by inflationary worries. Buying the NANR ETF is an alternative to buying a pure energy-related ETF, and my preferred method to have some exposure to the basic material sector as well. The third ETF is the KBWR ETF. This is the Invesco KBW Regional Banking ETF. Again, this financial ETF is not likely one that most will be familiar with. It has an AUM of just 71 million. However, its expense ratio is not excessive at 0.35%. The reason why not many investors are interested in this particular ETF is that it invests in smaller US regional banks, those that don't get the media attention as compared to the likes of your JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, etc. This is good because this ETF has been quietly outperforming its peers, as can be seen from the table, with this ETF's performance being one of the best on a year-to-date basis. My rationale for selecting this ETF is because the smaller regional banks are more sensitive to interest rate hikes compared to your larger blue-chip US banks, which are likely more diversified in their operations. This means that a rising rate environment will see these regional banks generating more income on a relative basis versus their bigger blue-chip counterpart. The last ETF on my list is the PICK ETF. This is the iShares MSCI Global Metals and Mining Producers ETF. This is a more diversified ETF compared to COPX, which mainly focuses on copper producers. The companies in this ETF are those that are involved in the extraction of diversified metals, aluminum, steel, as well as precious metals and mining. This ETF, however, excludes gold and silver miners. I've written about the PICK ETF in the past, which viewers can check out the link in the description. This ETF, surprisingly, has one of the best price performances over the last 3 to 5 years compared to its fellow peers. This is reason enough to buy into this ETF as a hedge against the rising effect of inflation, as well as to potentially ride the next commodity bull cycle. And there you go. These are my 4 selected ETFs to play a rising rate hike and inflation environment, one which could remain the dominant topic for the bulk of 2022. With that, I hope that you have enjoyed this rather short yet concise video on the 4 ETFs, which I believe will be solid candidates to hedge against a rising rate and inflation environment. Again, this is not a recommendation to go out there and buy these ETFs without doing your own necessary due diligence. What suits you might not suit me. With that, this is Royston signing out.